Hi everybody. If Tu Diep can't get pregnant, will CEO James still love her? In the pale twilight, a gentle breeze blew through the trees in front of the window. Make a soft rustling sound. Tuan is Tu Diep's brother, sat across from James in the small cafe, face showing tension. James felt the heavy atmosphere. He put down his coffee cup. Worried eyes looked at the man in front. "What's up?" James was calmly disappointed. "A bad feeling arose in my heart." Tuan took a deep breath. Hand gently squeezed the teacup in front of him. A moment later he looked up at James, eyes filled with an indescribable sadness. "James, I don't know what to say, but you need to know this." James frowned slightly and waited silently. Tuan continued slowly. "Tu Diep cannot get pregnant." The words echoed slowly, but like a lightning bolt struck James's ear. He sat motionless for a few seconds. Feels like the world around becomes blurry. "What did you say?" James repeated, his voice trembling slightly. Tuan sighed softly, his eyes full of regret. The doctor concluded, "Tu Diep's body has had some problems since childhood. This makes her unable to have children." Chopsticks, hand on the table unconsciously clenched. "I feel heartbroken, more than thinking about Tu Diep's reaction. When knowing this truth, she will surely suffer." "How long has Tu Diep known about this?" James asked. "Recent. She didn't want to tell you because she was afraid you would leave her." James immediately shook his head. "Does she think I am that kind of person?" Tuan was silent for a moment, then said softly, "No, but you know, with a woman, not being able to have children was a huge shock. She needs time to accept this fact." James took a deep breath, his eyes determined. "I will go see her." James stopped the car in front of Tu Diep's apartment. He looked up at her room window. The light was still on. He knew for sure she was still awake. After a moment of hesitation, he got out of the car and rang the doorbell. A moment later, the door slowly opened. Tu Diep stood there with long, slightly messy hair and a haggard face. Her eyes were red. She must have been crying all this time. When she saw the knight, she was stunned. "Why are you here?" James did not reply immediately. He gently walked up and hugged her tightly. Tu Diep stiffened and tears welled up again. She grabbed his shirt and buried her head in his shoulder, sobbing. "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I can't give birth to your child. I don't deserve you to be with me." James tightened his arms. His voice was deep but firm. "So stupid. Do you think I love you just because you can give birth? I love you for who you are, Tu Diep." Tu Diep sobbed. Hot tears soaked the shoulder of the nightdress. She was scared and tormented herself. But this moment, when in your arms, she felt all the burdens melt away. But do you want to have children?" James gently lifted her chin. Let her look into his sincere eyes. "Yes, I used to think about a family with children. But that doesn't mean if there are no children, we cannot be a family. You are the most important person to me." Tu Diep choked. She never thought that James would accept her unconditionally like that. James smiled and wiped away the tears on her cheeks. "We can adopt, can build a happy life together. In my own way. Don't worry, I will always be with you." Tu Diep said nothing more. "Hug me tight, as if wanting to engrave your warmth into my heart." James came home late at night. In the living room, James's father, sitting on a chair with a glass of wine in hand. Pensive eyes. "You're home," he said in a low voice. James nodded and sat down across from his father. He looked at his son for a moment and then spoke. "Tuan told me." James clenched his fist, but he did not avoid his father's eyes. "I know Dad will object." Father James put his glass of wine down on the table and sighed. "James, I just want you to think carefully. Not being able to have children is a big problem. James smiled faintly. Dad used to love Mom too, right? If that day Mother cannot give birth, did Dad abandon Mom? Father James's eyes widened in surprise, a flash of emotion. But then he shook his head, his gaze serious again. Son, marriage is not only about love. It is also a responsibility to prepare for the future. James calmly replied, I have thought very carefully. I don't care if Tu Diep can have children or not. I love her, and that's what matters most. He looked at James for a long time. Finally, he let out a deep sigh. If you have decided, I will not stop you. But remember, you must be responsible for your choices. James nodded with a determined look in his eyes. I understand, and I will never regret it. James left the living room with a slight smile. I know the journey ahead will not be easy, but he is ready to face it all, as long as death is by your side. True love, it's not about being able to have children. It lies in understanding, accept and overcome all challenges together. And James knows, I found the person I want to go with, to the end of the road. The next morning, James walked into the living room and saw his mother. James's mother was sitting sipping tea. She's an elegant woman with silver hair, but still retain the elegance. When I saw James, she gently put down the teacup, eyes observing son for a long time. Did you talk to your dad last night? She spoke calmly. James nodded and pulled up a chair to sit across from her. I have decided, Mom. James's mother did not answer quickly. She looked at her son, as if searching for something in his eyes. After a while, she sighed softly. Have you really thought it through, James? James nodded without hesitation. I have thought very carefully. I love Tu Diep, and I don't care if she can have children or not. James' mother raised her eyebrows slightly. Her eyes were not as angry as James's, thought but a deep sadness. Mom knows you love her, but have you thought about the future? I am the only son in my family. We need successors. James smiled slightly. Mom, what era is this that you still think like that? James's mother was silent for a moment, and then she spoke slowly. You don't understand. Mom doesn't object to Diep. I have met her several times, and Mom knows she is a good girl. But Mom just worry about you. One day when I get old, when I see my friends with complete families, do you regret it? James looked straight into his mother's eyes, his voice firm. Mom, happiness is not measured by having children or not. My happiness is to be with the one I love. If one day we want to have children, we can adopt. I believe that love and nurturing are more important. Bloodline. James' mother was silent. She knew her son's character once James made up his mind. Once determined, no one can change it. Final. She smiled slightly, but there was still a bit of worry in her eyes. Okay, Mom won't stop you anymore. But you have to promise me one thing. James was a little surprised by something. James's mother reached out and took her son's hand. Her voice became gentle but serious. If one day you feel tired, I regret this choice, don't hide it from me. Tell Mom I will always be there for you. James squeezed his mother's hand. His eyes flashed with emotion. I promise, Mom, but I believe that day will never come. James' mother looked at her son for a long time. Then she smiled softly. Well then, Mom, hope you happy. The story emphasizes that true love does not depend on the ability to have children or social standards of a perfect family. Instead, it is based on understanding. Share and be ready to overcome challenges together. James proved that. I love Tu Diep not because she can give birth, but because of her. Besides, the story also mentions the concept of traditions about marriage and children, as well as how generations in the family, facing changes in thinking and life values. James's parents' acceptance shows family love always exists, despite differences of opinion. James and Tu Diep will continue building the future together, although the journey ahead may not be easy. But with steadfastness in love and family support, they will find happiness in their own way. Tu Diep sat silently in the dark room. Yellow light fell on her face, cast faint shadows on the wall. She waited for James, was hoping, but in the end, it was all just a beautiful dream she drew for herself. James does not accept her. That moment when I heard you say distant words, her heart was broken. A chill ran through the body, as if someone had just pulled her out of a sweet dream and thrown her into reality. Merciless. She knew she couldn't get pregnant. She knows that is a big obstacle in their love, but she still hopes, still fooling herself that James would love her, despite all. But Tu Diep put her hand on her chest, where her heart is aching. She wanted to cry, but it seemed like her tears had run dry. For a long time, a feeling of emptiness had invaded her. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. Those thoughts rushed through her head, making her breathless. The love she cherished, preserve, finally could not overcome the harsh reality. She suddenly remembered the happy moments with James, the times he held her hand, warm hugs, promises of a future together. Now thinking back, it all feels like broken pieces of memory. Cannot accept anymore. She looked around the room. Every little corner bears his mark. Each object, every book, every cup of tea, all remind me of you. But now they only make her more heartbroken. Finally, she closed her eyes and leaned her head against the wall. Whisper in a weak breath, "If this is fate, then I have to accept it." And then darkness gradually enveloped her. Swallow all the broken pieces in the heart. What do you think about Tu Diep's problem? Please leave a comment.